Could you check on the
Yeah, yeah.
link that you
I'm
have, opening it on a different
yeah,
tab?
we're live now. Okay. That's yeah, thanks for that, Sadad. So we are live now. Welcome everyone who's joining us. Sorry about the delay in the beginning. I was rambling for a good 3 minutes before we realized that we were not live. So I'm happy to do that again. It's all good. So a big welcome to Saudade who's joined us for this artist chat. So hi Saudade.
Hello, everyone. Am I audible?
I can hear you and I hope.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, perfect. So we
So,
have.
yeah, hi everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here, and it's first kind of such interviews that I'm doing, and there's going to be music being played as well. So I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, wonderful. Thanks for coming and thanks for being part of this. It's also one of my first times hosting on YouTube. I tend to do more of most of this kind of stuff on IG Live, but as we were planning this event, we realized it would be better suited for this platform just because we're going to be playing music and we're going to be talking back and forth and things like this. So we decided to settle on this one instead. So thanks everyone for joining and trusting us to uh, create this event for you. Now, before I sort of get into the tracks and what we have in store for you, I just want to give a little bit of a background about how we met. And we met through a mutual link, which is Sadad's younger sister. We went to school together in Vancouver. And once we graduated, she told me that her brother is a music producer. That's sort of the time when I was starting to work on my craft. And then in quarantine, I think it was shortly after COVID had become the big sort of thing that changed our lives. We connected on the internet. I think we've probably met once in Vancouver for like 1 second or something, but we've actually never met in person. So we've been creating over the internet. We've been checking in with each other and kind of pushing each other through the creative process over this past year. And it's been really amazing to have a creative influence like Sadat sort of cheering me on and also helping me get better as I work on my craft. So I'm really happy to share some of the things we have in store. Sadat, if you have anything to add, feel free.
Yes, I'm also super grateful for the fact that we connected in the past year. Actually, it has been a couple of years now. So, yeah, that is true indeed. And I would say it has been quite a symbiotic relationship in a way that you have supported my music as well from day one. So for me, it means quite a lot, and it gives me the motivation to just go on and make more music. So yeah, thanks for that as well.
Wonderful. It's my pleasure. So folks, I'm gonna be a bore for those of you who are not a fan of this, but I'm actually gonna read out Sadad's a bit of his bio, a little of his bit of his background before we get into the more fun stuff, the more candid part of the conversation. So Sadad is a music producer and DJ currently based in Belgium. He has performed at iconic venues and events such as at the Toffler in Rotterdam and also at the Corals event in Amsterdam. His sets on SoundCloud have racked up thousands of listens and received a lot of enthusiastic response. He is now releasing his original music as a music producer. And so today we will be delving into sort of his philosophy as an artist, some of the things that have inspired him creatively, but also, feel free, Sadat, to also get into the technical aspects because I think a lot of the folks tuning in do have a music background, or even the listeners are quite engaged. So feel free to do that. And our hope of sort of doing this session is to bring to you some positivity in this time. COVID, for the most part, like people are getting vaccinated all over the world, but it's not something that's in the past for a lot of us. I'm in India right now with my family, and things are quite dire. And so the hope is like these types of sessions where we sort of give ourselves to art and submit to art, bring to us positivity and a zest for creation in life, and hopefully some inspiration. So that's what we will set out to do. Great. So Sadat, let's talk about your tracks. Let's talk about your journey. So this was my sort of very textbook type introduction, but if you were to introduce yourself to our audiences, what would you say?
So I'm Saudade, and that's my artist alias. My real name is Rahul. And for me, the musical journey started actually when I moved to the Netherlands, which is almost 5 years ago now. And even before that, I did have some inclinations towards music, and I was always quite diverse in the music that I was consuming in India, but electronic dance music was absolutely my favorite genre. And after I moved to the Netherlands, it was quite hard to escape from that scene. So I was, in a way, absorbed by it. And it all started with the first party that I attended in a club, Toffler, where ultimately I ended up playing as well after a few years. But that was actually the first night when I had an incredible experience in a nightclub. And for me, it was almost a completely different world. So after that, my journey started about recreating those moments through DJing, and then eventually I also started producing after about 2 years of DJing. And it took me 2 more years to actually start releasing my original tracks and so on. And this past year, I was studying at the SAE school in Brussels. So that's actually that was the only time where until now where I was able to fully, completely focus on music for almost a year, which was really inspirational and quite productive as well creatively. So it has been quite a journey so far.
That's incredible. So, on that, I'm going to nudge you a little bit. Like, what inspired you to move from, you were DJing for about 2 years, very successful at that as well. What pushed you to say, okay, I want to make my own stuff, I want to produce?
So DJing has always been for me a way of storytelling, and that's basically sending a message out to the world through music. And that involves actually choosing tracks, choosing them really carefully. But at some point, I was like, maybe I have something more to give in a way that, in terms of the tracks and the music I was DJing, I wanted to actually personalize it more and more. So that's actually probably the reason why I started to play around with a bunch of plugins and enabled them. That's how I started, and yeah, that's basically the beginning of the production process.
Wonderful. And would you say, sort of, going to school to actually concentrate on music for about a year and actually giving yourself to production, how did that accelerate your journey as a producer? I'm curious because, like, this sort of comes up a fair amount in terms of if you're starting out as a producer, like, should you consider going to school for it? So I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
So in my case, I did have a little bit of a background, I would say, about the basics. So I did have a few finished productions before I ended up studying in a music school. That for me actually was a big plus because I had clear ideas in my head on what areas I would like to improve on, and what are the specific skills that I would like to learn to further me in my music career and so on. So there was definitely a huge plus. And besides the fact that I just moved to a new city, a new life, new people, new places, which is also something which inspires me quite a lot. So in the end, it was sorry about that. But yeah, so in the end, this is actually also where I gained my inspiration from. So in the end, it ended up being a combination of all these different factors, which made this year quite great.
Wonderful. And we are at the receiving end of that great year. So we will delve into that without much further ado. So can you let me sort of pull open the first track that we are going to be playing. It's called "The Chorus of the Sphinxes," and I remember listening to this before you actually dropped it, and I to me even back then it sounded amazing, and then I'm really excited to play for everyone who's joining. But curious to hear about what was your process, what inspired you to not just make this track, but what I'm really curious to also know is to release this as your first one. Because for fun fact, people, Saudade has like hundreds of produced tracks on his SoundCloud in as private links, and just want to get some of your thoughts on that as well.
So yeah, that is actually an interesting and also kind of a hard question for me to answer because yeah, so I'll give it a shot. So in terms of the music, I actually have a whole catalog of electronic dance music, which is probably more deep house and techno related music that I do, and that's basically the music that I'm holding on right now, and I don't even have any release plans on when to actually release these tracks in the near future. But I also have tracks like the chorus of the Sphinxes and other, I would say, more electronica type of tracks, which are maybe not completely suited for the dance floor, but for the listeners at home. And throughout this past year, unfortunately, there were no parties, no events going on. So the idea was to actually reach the listeners in their homes and to actually produce something which can uh, help them uh, somehow in such difficult times. So that was actually the idea. So more electronic and less dance floor oriented music was actually the plan.
Perfect. Well, the listeners are in for a journey. So let's hit the play button. What do you say, Sadad?
Yeah, let's do it.
Perfect. Wow. It's oh, oh, sorry. Let's see. Wow. Look at the comments coming in. Wow. Amazing. Someone said healing for the soul, and I think that's actually the thought that came to me as well. I don't know what sample you've used, but it sounds to me like those advertisements where you have a glass and somebody's throwing ice just before they pour Coca-Cola or something. And it's like that type of relief, that type of anticipation of some kind of relief. I'm probably also thinking about that because it's so hot in Delhi right now. But um, what is that sound? If I'm even describing it correctly.
Is that like do you mean a percussive sound or is it something melodic? Yeah, percussive. So I've used a bunch of samples. First one is actually a cracking wood. And the other one is a coin which is being dropped on the floor,
Right.
and it makes this really almost a cyclic, uh, really interesting sound.
For sure. Yeah, wonderful. And so what is the person saying? Like I've been trying to guess, but what's the vocal sample saying?
Oh, I have no idea. This is this is so actually for me it was much more about actually the whole context in which they are being played rather than the actual lyrics. And that is quite frequently the way that I like to use and incorporate vocals as well,
Right.
so that it stays a little bit abstract, the message still.
Yeah.
In that way, it's much more in a way open to listener to interpret.
I like that. Yeah. So I'm curious to see what would. Shashank says, "Will audience get to ask questions?" Oh, of course, definitely. So he asks, "I just want to know the state of the mind when this track was in progress." So a big one, but definitely worth taking.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah.
Yes. So this track actually, and also the title of this track, is inspired from a painting by René Magritte. He's a French painter. Amazing work. I went to this was also the time when I just moved to Brussels. So I was in a state of mind where everything was new and everything felt so inspiring in a way. And then I was exploring different parts of the city and this museum at one point. And then I came across a painting from René Magritte, which is also
Yes, the
the track
artwork.
art of this track.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it clicked. It touched something inside of me. And it was also a special moment because I was so immersed in the whole museum, in the whole experience of being in that museum, the way it was smelling, the music I was listening to, and I was alone in that museum because of COVID restrictions. So that was really a special day. And after a few nights of just of having that experience, I was just making music this one night, and I wanted to somehow recreate that feeling or that moment, which was in that museum, and that's how it started. And it started with these two chords, two alternating chords, which is also how the track progresses. So that was basically the mood or the feeling for me, which sort of laid down a bed for me to just work on and add a bunch of ideas together.
Wonderful. Yeah. Wonderful. I hope that satisfied your question, Sashank. And if we have more questions, feel free to ask. Yeah. Akshay says Brussels, boom, in short, Belgium, the holy ground of EDM. I think he meant. Uh, so what's that like? What's it sort of being? You mentioned that um, the place has a big effect on your creative process, and going to the museum, actually trying to immortalize that moment, played a part in this process. So what other than that, like how do you see place connecting with the sort of music you make and able to, like, your ability to reach listeners and things like this?
Yeah, so that's kind of a deep question as well. And for me, the way it works is like I find I'm much more great at combining a so for me, music is kind of about exactly as you said. So imprinting a moment from my life into something that will, I guess, stand the test of time in a way. But when I was just new to the city, everything was new for me, and that for me is actually one of the ways to, I guess, inspire creativity in a way, because again, I'm inspired a lot by people that I meet, by the nature that I visit, also the museums, the artwork. So um, this was huge for me at that stage because it was a lot of influences from a variety of directions. So
Yeah. That's wonderful. I think one of the observations that's coming to my mind, I didn't know that, the artwork that's featured on the track actually inspired your creation of it as well. And I think it's almost like metaphorical that that happened, because the artwork is not a bird in a sky, but a sky in a bird. And even
yeah,
your artist photograph right now is not you in a place, but a place in you. And I think it's kind of poetic that it struck you, because that was a type of imagery that was sort of already prevalent in your process. So I don't know, I just think it's curious.
that's in my opinion that's very well put actually, and even I had not thought of it this way, but maybe even subconsciously it did have an effect on me. And also about my artist profile, my press pic that I was using until now, that's also something about, as you said. So all these influences, all these experiences in my head. So I am me, and they are, uh, I am them, and they are me in a
Yeah.
in a way. So yeah, it makes sense.
Beautiful. So I think our listeners really enjoyed that track, and we are good to move to our next feature. And Saudade, feel free to delve into the process of this. This is non-zero sum games going forward, so feel free to tell our listeners about that as well.
So wow, this track has really been a journey. Actually reaching this point at which this track is right now. So the fun fact is, me and Tanya, we basically started working on this track almost an year ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I just had laid down my first idea, which didn't even have, uh, I guess, 10-15% of the elements that are in this track. So it's completely new than what we originally started on. So I was just working on this idea, and I decided to send it to you, and uh, just for like experimentation about if something can happen, or if we could work together, because this is also the first track that we had worked on
Yeah.
together. So yeah, and to my amazement, the next morning I wake up with a bunch of ideas, and I didn't even like give you any clear instructions on what my vision of the track is and whatnot. I was just like, yeah, just this is it's a playground, and just play. And then I was so surprised that everything made perfect sense in terms of the lyrics, in terms of the feeling, and in terms of the way the vocals were done. So that was basically the starting point of the track. And then it because maybe it felt really special for me, this track. I sat on it for months really, and in the end we ended up doing about 15 different
Yeah.
versions of this track. And this is I guess one of our favorites.
Yeah, for sure. For me, it's so easy to impress me. Anything you make, I'm like, this is amazing. But so I think I've lost that ability to even say that anymore. Like, if I really like something, there's no way to tell if I really, really like it or if I really like it. So, but this is definitely one of the ones which I'm like, wow, this blew my mind. So, and I also want to thank you for sort of allowing that space, because the thing with collaboration, I feel, is you need so much comfort, at least for me, to be able to do that. And it's not like all the ideas that you have are going to make it to the final version, but you need to feel free enough to just sort of shoot, and have that space. So I remember being very moved when you sent to me the very first recording. I just was like as if there was like a gush of wind, and I just stood there and I was like, what? And that movement, I suppose, or sort of that, the way that a music piece of music can touch you and make you feel like I want to add something of my own to this. I want to also imprint my own sort of creativity onto that. Like that was a very special thing even for me to experience. And I think a lot of people assume that if you're a musician, like, oh, it's so easy to jam, like you find another musician and it's done. But I feel like there's so much, it's like you have to chase that connection, I find often. That's why bands have auditions and things like this, So I'm really glad that it clicked the first time around. So I'm happy to present that. So let's do it.
Also, Tanya,
Yeah.
I think it's best if you could mute yourself when the
Sure.
track plays, because there is some kind of static.
Sure.
Thank you.
That was amazing. It's uh it's so weird. Like every time you listen to new things. I don't know if that I mean you produced it, so who am I asking? But definitely one thing I'm sure of is the owl made it. The owl sound made it through all 15 versions. So that's something I'm really happy about.
Yeah, exactly. The hoot as well as the birds. Yeah, that stayed actually, and also the ambience, pretty much.
Yeah.
Because remember, in the first version, we also had the chords, and those chords were actually the ones to which you wrote the
Yeah.
song. But now they are actually in the break for just a specific part. So a lot has changed.
Yeah. For me, it's like, when you listen to a remix of a song and you're like, oh, I remember that element. Oh, it's coming back now. It's amazing. So, a lot of amazing comments. Like, obviously, it's a hit. But definitely, one thing that strikes me is the level of attention, right? So, or I mean, a lot of people say like, some songs or some tracks, they're able to just they have an inspiration, they have a moment, and then they come to their computer and then they produce it, and most of it is done. But this one, as you mentioned, it took over a year with all the feedback that you collected and all the re-listens and reproductions and things like this, like how dark should it be, how this. But I just think this is just right, like the game's on and then it's like, come, let's play. Like it doesn't end right away, so it's amazing. But tell us a little bit about that, like some songs happening in a day versus some song happening over a year. Like what's it like for you most of the time?
So here we have, I think, the perfect example. So the first one, the chorus for the Sphinxes, it happened like this. So within like 4 hours, I was done with the laying the original ideas down, and then I also had a first arrangement, and then the next day, I basically mix it and master it. So within like 2 days, it was done, and which is probably the fastest I've made a track. On the other hand, non-zero sum games is probably the longest that I've taken to finish a track, and I think it just happens because sometimes when I'm like making music, I feel so inspired and the ideas just flow. So I'm basically just jamming on my push and like I have a melody one after the other, and at some point it just feels complete, the track. So it's more like a feeling that you have that yeah, it's done, and you basically have nothing more to add in this particular moment. So that's when you call it a track, I guess. But on the other hand, with non-zero sum games, I always had this feeling since I started that yeah, there's some more to add to the song, and whatnot. So in that sense, I basically let it sit for about 2 3 months when I was home in India, and I was working on other music, and it all went great. And then I got back to the track after that phase, and then I had fresh ears, and I was listening to everything from a fresh perspective. And also on those days, I was learning a lot. So every time I would listen back to the track, I was like, yeah, the clap doesn't sound, or the snap doesn't sound right, or the percussion can be more a little bit in the front, and so on. So I had all these thoughts in my head. So I just couldn't not improve them once I knew the idea. So I think it's a combination of both. So I always felt like I had something more to add, and also technically I was improving because of my experience at SAE.
Right.
So yeah, that's it.
Wow. Wonderful. Wonderful. If there's any questions, people feel free to ask, because Saudade is all yours to answer them. And if not, we can also move to the other track if you have something to say. Priyangi says the vocals are soft, but the track hits just the right spots to push the very much imposing existence of the real world, if that makes sense. Yeah, I think this is one thing, Sadad. I mean, with all your tracks, like I feel like it's a journey. I think I don't know how many times I've told you that for every track, but how do you conceptualize? You've mentioned, for DJing, you want to tell a story, but then even in your productions, you have a very strong storytelling tradition that shows through. And where are you making conscious decisions when you're saying, okay, this next part is going to sound like this because I want the story to move in this direction. Like, what is your process to make it sound like a journey?
So for me, I'm quite visual about music. So whenever because I listen to ambient music quite a lot. So just film scores and lush drone pads and whatnot. So listening a lot to that kind of music, and I also this is probably also one of my favorite kinds of music I like to listen to when I'm home. And this music, in my opinion, is quite visual in a way that when I listen back and close my eyes, it's almost like I'm in a completely different space, and I can almost sometimes imagine things to the last detail, depending on all the melodies that I'm hearing and all the sounds which are in the track. So this is also something that I try to recreate. So whenever I'm like sitting down on a track, I always these days I always start with an atmosphere, so to say, which might be either chords or just one single drone note, which is being played over and over again in a loop. And what I notice a lot is that when in this particular set of setting, I almost start to like hallucinate in a musical way. So it's almost like I'm imagining notes in my head which aren't really there. So that's what I mean when it's a journey. So it's a journey of actually making music. So if it feels like a journey for me when I'm actually in the studio, that's actually a good indication of how it will translate to the finished product.
Right. Was it always like this, like when you started out, or do you think this is certainly something that's come over time with skill?
Definitely, skill has a lot to it has a lot of role to play in this, and also I would say all the musical influences that I have, and um, believe it or not, all the music that we listen to as producers, it does subconsciously affect the music that we eventually make. So in my case,
Surprise, everyone! Surprise! Yeah. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah,
In your case.
yeah, in my case, it was um, yeah, it was like I didn't after a certain point, I didn't want to listen to electronic music anymore. So the dance music anymore. And the reason behind that was I was listening it a lot because in my connection to the dance floor as a DJ. And when that stopped, I was looking for a way out, and then I started listening more and more to ambient music. And that's how it gave me almost a fresh perspective to kind of reintegrate back into dance music. So
Right.
that's why there is what I'm trying to do in the end, or what's subconsciously happening, is like a bridge
Yeah.
between the two.
Definitely. The outro definitely sounds like that. Uh, Wonderful, wonderful. Love your answers. And so let's move to the next track, Saudade. We are going to be listening to "The Necessity for Freedom." So do you want to talk a little bit about that? Explain your process or
Yeah.
any thoughts that come to mind. Yeah.
This track is also pretty special, and also something which I started last year in October. So also right after I'd moved to Brussels, and this is a project which I started, and then I basically didn't go back to the track for about 3 months, and then I sent this track to one of my flatmates, who is a filmmaker. So she was like, "Yeah, this is amazing," and she wanted to do a music video back then. So we eventually did make a music video of this track, due to
Bomb.
come out,
Yeah.
which is due to come out in the coming weeks, and this track as well. So it is unreleased right now, and it will be released next Friday.
Wow. Wow. Look at all our listeners getting a treat. Wonderful. Well, let's delve into it. Thanks for sharing that, Sadad. Wow. Let's see what. Wow. Folks are loving it. So the music video is also out, and so that I must commend you on your versatility as a producer, because obviously, we know you for your DJing and your dance production, like heavy work. You said you have that as well, but going for something like this, which is so different from that type of music, like you've got this hip hop-ish beat, R&B style vocal chops. You've got even the length of the track, for that matter, is not in the tradition that you grew up in, so to speak, in your music. So tell us a little bit about that. This is really exciting.
So, in terms of music, as I said, even before I would say I had moved to the Netherlands, my musical taste was actually pretty diverse, which included, let's say, from Indian classical to hip hop, R&B, and proper EDM. So, and that always had some kind of influence on me growing up in India. But that was the time when I didn't even think of doing anything professionally with music for many years. And when I'd come to the Netherlands, it all started. And then I also realized that being a bit experimental in my approach to making music also helps me stay inspired, and also helps
Right.
me in always, like, because maybe it's something which you have experienced as well, but I like to believe that as a producer, after a certain point you start to fall into certain patterns of working styles. Like, for the first, I would say, couple of years, I was always starting with a four to the floor kick drum, and that already takes away maybe a little bit the rhythmic part of the track. So you are kind of constrained in a way. Maybe it's good in certain situations, but usually I like it a little bit open until the point that it is not. So that is probably the reason why I started experimenting with hip hop, even R&B, and even, I would say, even the rhythm and uh, the lesser BPM of
Right.
these tracks actually goes really well with some of the calming melodies or like long lush chords and pads that I have. So
Yeah.
I also thought maybe it could be a nice fusion between these two styles.
100%. I think what struck me as a listener was that I think out of all the tracks, this was the one I was like banging my head to, even though it's sort of, I don't know, perhaps it's the moment in which the song finds you too. And that's a huge part of, how we connect with music as well. So perhaps, and for those of you who will be checking out the music video, I've had a sneak peek, thanks to that, and it is amazing. So really looking forward to that as well. And I'm really like in awe of sort of your ability to transcend so easily almost into these different types of styles, and try to not limit yourself, which I think, like you said, like for me at least, I've not experienced that yet. I think I'm still learning so much that it helps me to limit myself as much as possible right now. But then I'm sure, and I hope that time comes where I feel like, I can make that, let me try something else. uh,
Yeah.
so wonderful, wonderful. Let's hear.
But something to add there as well. But also one of the reasons why I started working with different genres is also because I wasn't completely inspired to make dance music, or dance music wasn't coming out naturally out of me, if you know what I mean. So I had started feeling like I was kind of forcing myself onto it just to produce dance floor bangers
Right.
one after the other, and that felt a little bit overwhelming
Right.
after almost an year or 2 years of being in that state. So
Yeah.
experimenting has definitely played a big role in keeping it fun also for me, because that for me is super important when it comes to making music.
For sure. Definitely experimenting, like you said, for
How much
fun,
of a
but also.
head I'm
Right.
banging while making a track.
Right. Because you can't dance, so might as well dance with your
Yeah.
head. Wonderful. I think I love that. The fact that your experimentation comes not only from this need for, or this excitement which comes with the fun part, but also the fact that you want to be genuine with yourself, and like you said, you don't want to force out dance tracks when you've not been in that environment for almost a year or more. So wonderful. Venki also has a comment for us, and thanks, Venki. Shout out to you for helping us set up the stream. Myra says, "What do you do in your initial creative journey to ensure that you're experimenting?" And Myra, as Saudade, you pointed out, she is the director for your music video, I think, or collaborator. So
Yeah, she's the director as well as the producer for the music video.
wonderful. So you have a question from your producer's producer. Let's do it.
So what's the question again? Sorry, I missed it.
Yeah, she says, what do you do in your initial creative journey to ensure that you're experimenting?
So what I do is, so first step is actually destroying the box that I typically work in, which might be starting with a kick drum, let's say, or starting even with an Atmos, let's say. So for example, this song, the necessity for freedom, it started with the 4 chords that you hear in the intro, which is a Rhodes keyboard, and that actually made me feel a certain way. So I'm actually in that space, and the fact that I basically destroyed the box in the first place, and I have a fresh perspective or a fresh start to something, actually opens up a whole world of possibilities for me to work with. And that's what happened in the end, because then I was experimenting a little bit with the rhythmic part, and then the hi-hats came up, and then I was like, yeah, these hi-hats sound a little bit like R&B, so maybe I should start to think more in that direction. And here comes a part of constraining myself, because
Right.
if I stay open the whole time, then I would have infinite 16-bar loops, which are
Right.
never finished. So it's also a matter of timing as well. Like when do you actually want to start to narrow down your approach of music making? And I mean it actually like track per track basis. So in that way, you actually end up with more finished music, if that makes sense.
Yeah. No, I think that was wonderfully answered. Wonderful. So, Sadad, with that, let's move to our final track. Does that sound good? All right, folks, this is Triptych. And Sadad, do you have any words to share for us? Share with us.
Yeah, something about this track as well. This also actually started in a museum, in an art exhibition that I visited a couple of weeks ago, actually. This is actually one of my recent tracks. And the exhibition was in the MIMA Museum here in Brussels. And it was about AI and how life might look like in 2060 when the robots take over the world.
Right.
Which maybe sounds a bit unlikely to me, but that's what the exhibition was about.
Nervous laughter.
Um, yeah, yeah. Yeah. So Triptych was actually the name of an artwork that I saw in the museum, and then I ended up taking a couple of pictures of the description and doing some research about the artist and what this word really means. So in the end, it's an artwork which is kind of a 3-part series. So 3 little parts ending up making, again, coming back to the point of telling a story. So first part, second part, and then a third part. And this is also what I felt happened to me when I was here in the studio making music about the idea. So for me, the inspiration from the museum came later, and this is, I think, the interesting part. So I was working on something, and it felt like a triptych, almost like first, second, and third. And then I was like, yeah, maybe that's an apt name. And then, yeah, that's how the track happened.
Yeah. I think what strikes me is that so much of art is trying to find that faithful expression, and being able to be that multidisciplinary where you can take inspiration from, like for you, you said you are a very visual producer, taking those cues and being observant around the art around you has, and how you connect that back to the music. I find it very inspiring. So friends, let's hear it for Triptych.
You are still muted, Tanya?
Sorry.
Yeah.
This feels like a meeting where people are muted. But wow, wow, absolutely amazing. People are in love with this track, as am I, because we went from our R&B chill vibe to the full banger. So that's Saudade for you all. Amazing. And now that you mentioned it, I actually see the shape of the song is like three like parts, and now that you put that in perspective, it really sounds like that. So, are you hoping to play this as one of your special tracks sometime when?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
definitely.
have I have big plans for this track, but I don't know what that's going to be just yet.
Yeah, this is special. So, and we are delighted to hear it first. So, thank you so much for that, Sadat.
Thank you. A pleasure. Yeah.
Yeah. Folks, if you have any questions, any comments, feel free to throw them in the comment section in the live chat, and we are happy to take questions as we go. This is our final track that we have for you today, but I think everybody enjoyed that journey because every track is a journey, but even the selection and the way of course, you are a DJ for a reason, but but that was some good planning on your part, so that I have to give you credit for that.
Thank
Uh,
you. Thank you.
on that, Arjav Malhotra asks, "Good stuff, mate. Thoughts on finishing tracks? Question mark.
Um, Finishing tracks. That's actually yeah, that's actually a question which even I, as a producer, love to ask. Like I keep attending these pro sessions in these courses. Even the teacher, my teacher at SAE, and this is also something which I struggled with, especially in the first year of making music, which is actually to how to get out of your 4-bar loop. And one of the big indications that you should get out of the session view and then go to the arrangement view, speaking of Ableton, and start laying out ideas, is actually when um, personally you're listening to a loop, right? And after a certain point, it starts to get repetitive and it starts to feel boring in a way. And if you are, for example, if you're working on a track and you are playing this for like 16 bars and you just keep listening to it over and over again without actually being tired of it, in my opinion, that's actually a big sign for you that maybe it's finished. Maybe the things are interesting enough, and maybe if you keep like introducing some stuff and take away some stuff, um, it'll still sound fresh all the way to the end. And in my opinion, it's actually really something subjective, and this is also something which one needs to like explore and find out on their own. And I actually mean the point where one says that, oh yeah, I have all the ideas in that I wanted at this moment, and now it's time to arrange and actually finish a track. So that's one, and maybe a practical tip that I can give is actually being fast in your process. And by fast, I mean, for example, I struggled with quite a lot when I was just starting out, that I couldn't figure out how to get this particular sound that I have in my head out in the speakers. And that was actually a little bit frustrating in a way because you have these ideas and you just want to like lay them out as quick as you can, and that keeps you like fresh and always in the kind of in a mood, and you keep going. So and that comes with, I guess, hours right out of the bat. Like how many hours have you spent with the software and your plugins and your synthesizers? How much do you know about sound design and stuff? So the quicker you are, in my opinion, the more finished tracks you'll have. Because if I'm just working on this loop for like days and days and days, I'm just gonna get frustrated with it and give up and start another song. So that's my take on it. I do think it's quite personal, so I highly encourage you to just experiment and sort it out for yourself in a way.
Yeah. On that follow-up question, Sadat, we have Vander. Arjav says perfect. I think that was well put. On finishing finished tracks, you have quite a few, right, as well, like of your own. Um, how do you select which ones you want to put out into the world? Because I remember seeing your premium SoundCloud with like how many were they like?
Oh, let me actually quickly check. Um, this is actually insane, and some days I'm like frustrated how difficult sometimes things are. About I have 224
These are
tracks in
finished
my
tracks, people. These are these are not your
yeah
average. But
yeah pretty much. But also I think I'm quite hard on myself for actually reaching that point where when I like to say that, oh yeah, the track is finished, and just being comfortable with being okay and not still feeling like there's still space to be improved and stuff. So I'm pretty hard on myself, and that's probably the reason why I don't have any released music as of now, or at least not any dance tracks. And yeah, and I remember a brilliant advice that someone gave me a while ago, which was actually one of my supervisors at SAE, my school. I was sitting down with him in the studio this one day and almost in tears, and I'm like, man, I don't even know what to do. This is just so frustrating, like I don't know what to do with all this finished music, and it just after some days, I don't know what's good anymore. Like I cannot be like still objective about it because it's my own music. And what he said was, a track is finished when you basically are out of ideas in this given moment. When you have given your all in this particular moment, that's when it's finished for you. And if people are going to like it or not, that's again sort of subjective. But in a way, you have given all you had to give in this particular moment. So just now, just let it flow out there in the world. But again, then my next big concern was about probably about quality standards for sure, because I listen to all these producers releasing like bangers every month, and I'm like, yeah, I have to be at a certain level, and I keep pushing myself. But most days it's healthy, but some days it's kind of unhealthy as well in a way, because then it hampers my confidence as a producer in my own craft. So maybe comparison is good. It can be healthy in some cases, but it also can make you end up with no released music at all, just like I am right now. So this is something which I'm struggling with, and something which I must improve. Um, so yeah, that's kind of the process.
Yeah, no, thanks for being honest about that. For someone who's just getting into production, like imagining so many finished tracks is like goals, you know. And then obviously the journey is such that at every stage you encounter a new set of challenges. So, you know, for you to be able to putting now your music for everyone to listen to, I think it's commendable because you know it's a lot of work that's gone into them and. You know, Aishwarya rightly puts it. She says, "You have done amazing work. How do you feel about it?" And I think that's kind of the sort of the other pieces. Like, congratulations. You know, like it's a lot of sweat and toil, and as you said, you have to be fast. You have to put in the hours. So, how do you feel about it, Sadad?
I feel great. It's a really nice feeling to have. And some days when I'm just looking back and listening back to my tracks, which I produced almost a year ago, now they all sound like crap, for the lack of a better word. But no, really, that's what I mean. But this also goes to show, I guess, how much I've improved as a producer. So maybe it's a good sign. And maybe then I start to think like maybe holding on to those tracks was actually a nice idea, because in just a matter of year, I'm here. And now
Right.
I have like so much more to say and so much more to like give out to the world in terms of the art that I'm making.
Yeah.
And also this also reminds me of another interesting point that I sort of discovered on my own about my music. When I'm actually working on a track, it's super hard to be objective about how good it is, because as an artist, you are kind of connected to your art in a way. So the hard part is actually like drawing a boundary between you and your art. And for me, that's something really difficult to that's a difficult state for me to achieve when I'm actually making something, because then I'm like so much into it that
Right.
I am my art almost. But that's why I like my tracks to just sit in my library and not release them for like 6 months or 3 months or 4 months or whatever. Then I go back to them, and if they still sound fresh, if I still can bang my head at roughly the same intensity that I did while producing the tracks, that's an amazing sign that maybe I'm onto something good. And that actually inspires me to then either release it or send it out to labels or demos and whatnot.
Right. Wonderful. Yeah. No. Congratulations, and I'm glad to hear that. So we have also Vander asking, "Who's your favorite producer?" Lol. I'm pretty sure he wants to hear his own name, but
Um,
joking, joking.
yeah, yeah. So, my favorite producer right now is Olafur Arnalds. He's an Icelandic producer, one half of Kiasmos. I don't know if they're together anymore, but yeah, the dude's incredible. He put out this EP actually this year, which is called Some Kind of Peace. Actually, one of the most amazing, maybe one of the most amazing, if not the most amazing albums that I've heard ever.
Wow.
And it's all, I guess, ambient music, maybe a little bit of drums here and there and percussions, but the guy is super inspiring. He experiments a lot with orchestral music, and like he does a lot of film scores and TV scores as well. So super inspiring. I just love to look at. He has a bunch of videos on YouTube as well, and you guys should check him out on a channel called Spitfire Studios. That's the studio he has together with Hans Zimmer
Oh,
in UK.
wow.
So yeah, these guys are amazing.
Yeah, that sounds like some good stuff. And Vander has left the chat. He says, "Not the answers I was expecting." Bye, lol. Wonderful. Wonderful. On that happy note, if there are no further questions, Saudade, thank you so much for being a part of this and for sharing your incredible, mind blowing music and inspiring the hell out of everyone who's listening. So thanks again, and a big congratulations to you, or a big best of luck for the release on Friday with a music video and the necessity for freedom, and hope that goes really well for you. And I mean, I have to say this, like when I was listening to Triptych, and you've described the Toffler club setting to me, and I was like imagining that with your description of Toffler, and thinking, wow, that will be some rocking stuff. So you have an exciting road ahead of you. So thank you so much for being a part of this.
Thank you so much for giving me this chance, Tanya, and for supporting me as an artist. It really has meant a lot. And yeah, it's super inspiring as well in a way to actually share not just my music but also what's behind my music as well in a way. So thanks again for the opportunity, and it has been really fun.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your evening. We will leave you at that. Good night. Bye bye.
Bye bye.